But off we go to the vineyard I want to take you to this morning. So a little bit of a ramble to get there. You can see the soils. It's like chalk, clay, and then it's a bit red, which is trias, a bit mixed in. And there's also some marlstone. Morning, Diane. Diane's got her top on today. Hello. And if we go down here in search of my little vineyard, we're going past the olive grove here. Somebody asked me yesterday if we produce olive oil. We don't, but there is a very good producer in the village of Touchon who makes olive oil. We have this little grove really for decoration here. It was planted by Jean-Marc 20 years ago. Don't forget, if you have any questions, pop them in the question box at the bottom of the page. You can see it does look a little overcast. They haven't forecast rain, which is good, but it is very muggy. It's like 17 degrees. Sandra's picked grapes in this vineyard. I think you have, haven't you, Sandra? And then on the way down, just point this. Jean-Marc told me I had to point out this little olive tree. It really annoys me, this olive tree. There's one olive tree that Jean-Marc prunes, and this is it. And I just prefer the wild look on the olive trees. Hi, Mum and Dad. But Jean-Marc always insists on pruning this one, so he's very proud of it. He's even proud of it because he knows it really annoys me. I think nature should be wild, not pruned. Apart from the vines, of course. So down we come, and we're going to go slightly down the hill, past the lovely Gardie landscape. So Gardie is the natural landscape here. It's full of wild herbs and wild flowers at this time of year. Yeah, Jean-Marc's an artist, definitely an artist. So this is the vineyard, I'm just coming up, and this is a vineyard in Domaine Jones, but it's a bit atypical. So you can see it in the distance here. It's a little bit atypical because it's very young. So we actually planted it when we started the domain. We planted it 10 years ago. So these vines here are 10 years old. So I'm just going to go into the vineyard. I'm going to step across the electric fence, which isn't on at the moment. That's to keep those pesky wild boars out. And we're going to look at the vine. Now, for those of you who've been following, or those of you who just know about vines and grapes, I'm not going to tell you what it is. So I'm going to see with my description if you can guess what it is. So looking at the leaves, can you see there's like a little pink hue? When the first leaves, when they come out, they've got a lovely pink rim to them. That's very typical of this grape variety. Yeah, but you didn't realise we have two very small parcels of 10-year-old vines, and that's it. We don't. Everything else is over 40 years old, and this is what Jean-Marc planted when we started the domain. Yeah, Bertie the Scoodle Noodle. It's Syrah. Congratulations, and I hadn't even told you anything else. Fantastic. Now, Sandra will tell me if anybody got in there before you. Hamish, yes, it's Syrah. So let's take a look. We've looked at the pink top bit, which is the giveaway, and then the leaves. So basically, let me find here. Oh, it's got a bit missing. Here's one. Yeah, this one's better. So basically the leaves, it's in between the Grenache and the Carignan. So if you remember, the Carignan is really embossed and very indented. The Grenache is really smooth and almost round when you flatten it. And if you look here, the Syrah is in between. So it's in between on the number of indents, in that when you flatten it, it's pretty round, but with just a little bit more indented compared with the Grenache. And also on the top, it's slightly embossed, not as embossed as the Carignan, and definitely not as smooth as the Grenache. And if you turn it over, a slight hair. So again, in between the Carignan and the Grenache. The Carignan has hairs, the Grenache is smooth. And again, on the veins, which isn't the correct name, somebody could correct me on what we call these, the veins on the top, between the Carignan and the Grenache. So this is a Syrah or the Shiraz, and we make our top wine actually comes from these very young vines. As they're very young, they have a really, really low yield. So the yield is about, in the first year, it was about 10 hectolitres per hectare. It wasn't actually the first year because you're not allowed to harvest the first year, you have to wait for 3 years. So the Syrah, and we make a wine called La Perle Rare. Have any of you tasted La Perle Rare Syrah? We're actually on the 15 vintage at the moment, and it's such a lovely, deep, rich, heavy, but very fruity style of Syrah. Yeah, it's a bit early. I didn't mean, are you trying it now? I meant, have you tried it? It is a little bit early if you're in the UK or in France to be trying some wine. And then we're just, there's Christine's out in the vineyard over here. So while you see if anybody's tried it, Hamish, yeah, they've got our hands up there. What sort of dishes do you think it would go with? As you can see on the wires again, so the Syrah, it's a giveaway too for those who've been watching. The Syrah is always trained on wires here, but otherwise it just sprawls too much over the vineyard. So here you can see planted on nice, neat rows. But you can see they're still pretty small, you know, for 10 years growth. That's because the soils are so poor here in the village and around. So I'm looking at your questions here. There's no questions coming up in the question box, which may be because either it's not working or you prefer to just write them in the text. That's fine. Whatever suits, I will try and keep up with them. So just say good morning. Salut Christine! Ça va? Alors, tu es en train de faire quoi? Ah, les pieds aussi. Je te laisse continuer, je vais montrer. So, let's go and have a look what Christine's doing. So, this is now the major work in the vineyard. And that it's called a relevage, and it's actually putting the little shoots, which are really fragile. C'est fragile. Voilà. So, she's doing it really carefully. So, you unattach the wires, loop them under the branches, and then the branches are held between, and then just get the action here, and then she's tidying up the bottom of the vine. We do that because we don't want any of the energy of the vine to go in growing these bottom shoots, so we prefer it to go in the top. Get out of the way. Oh, and another one. So how far are they planted apart? I don't know. I think it's about, I'll get back to you. I will answer your question tomorrow, who asked me what was the vine spacing, but it's definitely a tractor width. It's not my old vines, which are a horse width. That was Amber Valley wines. I'll tell you tomorrow. I have to ask Jean-Marc. So let Christine carry on. Je te laisse travailler with her early morning work. Anybody fancy doing this? I tell you, it's such a relaxing job to do. It's lovely. Oh, thanks, Hamish. You like the crew on the back of the t-shirts. I'm glad you picked up on that. I spent all last harvest explaining to the French why they had crew, CRU, written on the back of their t-shirts. Yeah, massale is Syrah. At yours, the same clone as in the Rhone. What's interesting about this vineyard, it's actually a massale selection. So this is actually a massale selection is like the old-fashioned way of grafting vines. So all vines are grafted, but the massale selection is actually a selection of the best branches when you come to grafting. So you take a cutting, was the word I was looking for. So it's a selection of the best cuttings from the best vines. So literally you would follow your vineyard for a year. You'd see which plant has the best fruit on it for what you want to make. And then you would take a cutting from that particular plant. It's called a massale selection. It's a very labour intensive and long process of doing it, but this one we selected, it was actually from the Rhone, so it's a massale selection that we discovered in the Rhone, and we tasted the wine. It was Côte Rôtie and it was absolutely delicious. So we managed to get hold of some of these massale selection plants, which is not easy, and planted them in 2 little vineyards here in Tuchon, one here and one at Falandrine, where we have the picnic site, which some of you have been to. And we were just amazed. I mean, we are the only people to have this massale selection Syrah in our village, definitely, and in the neighbouring area, and the results are just fantastic. And because it's just so lovely, dark, rich, full-bodied, we age it in new oak barrels for 24 months before we release, and then it has a couple of years in bottle as well. So it's a very special wine from a very special vineyard. Thanks for that question, Marcel. So that's me signing off from a rather cloudy Touchon and the vineyard Ramble at Domaine Jones.